All roads lead to Rome. Almost everyone has heard this famous saying, but when you actually arrive in Rome, you begin to understand why this phrase has survived for thousands of years. More than 2,000 years ago, this city truly became the heart of the ancient world. Roads stretched outward from here, while Roman laws, architecture, language, and the order of an empire spread across Europe, North Africa, and Western Asia. Today, when we walk through Rome, we're not just visiting the Colosseum, the Trevi Fountain, or the Pantheon. We are discovering how a small settlement along the Tiber River slowly transformed into one of the most influential cities in human history. Rome is located in the Lazio region of central western Italy, with the Tiber River flowing through the heart of the city. The earliest Rome grew between the river and the famous Seven Hills of Rome. According to legend, the story of Rome began with twin brothers, Romulus and Remus. As infants, the two brothers were abandoned and later raised by a she-wolf. When they grew up, they argued over where to build their new city and who should rule it. In the end, Romulus became the victor, and according to legend, he gave the city his own name, Rome, creating the mythical beginning of this legendary city. Tradition says Rome was founded in 753 BC. From a small settlement beside the Tiber River, Rome grew into the Roman Republic and eventually became the Roman Empire, a vast civilization that stretched across Europe, Asia, and Africa. The Romans built roads, founded cities, created laws, fought wars, and spread their language, architecture, political systems, and culture across an enormous territory. But even after the fall of the empire, Rome never disappeared from history. Instead, it transformed into one of the most important centers of the Christian world. After the unification of Italy, Rome became the capital of the country in 1871. Today, the city of Rome has a population of more than 2.7 million people, while the greater metropolitan area is home to over 4.2 million residents, making it one of Italy's most important cities. And because Rome has experienced countless moments of glory, decline, and rebirth, yet has never truly vanished from the world stage, it earned another unforgettable name, the Eternal City. Today, the historic center of Rome is recognized as a UNESCO World Heritage Site, continuing to tell the story of a city that has carried more than 2,000 years of history on its shoulders. So now, let's follow the story of the Eternal City, one landmark at a time. When you arrive in Rome, the first place you simply cannot miss is the Colosseum. It is without a doubt the city's most iconic landmark and the largest surviving ancient Roman amphitheater in the world. Construction began around 72 AD, and at its peak, it could hold nearly 80,000 spectators. Now imagine this scene nearly 2,000 years ago. Tier after tier of seats were filled with roaring crowds. Gladiators entered the arena through underground passageways. Wild animal hunts took place. Public executions were held, and elaborate performances inspired by mythology were staged for entertainment. Historical records even suggest that in its early days, the arena may have hosted mock naval battles by flooding the floor with water. Beneath the arena was a complex underground network of tunnels, elevators, and storage rooms. These mechanisms allowed animals, scenery, and performers to suddenly appear in the center of the arena, creating spectacular surprises for the audience. After centuries of earthquakes, weathering, and human destruction, the Colosseum today remains only a fragment of its former glory. But when you stand on the ancient seats and look down into the arena, it is still easy to imagine the deafening cheers that once filled this enormous stone circle. The most impressive thing about the Colosseum is not just its size. It represents almost everything about the Roman Empire: its power, organization, entertainment, and even its brutality, all captured inside one massive structure. Right next to the Colosseum stands the Arch of Constantine. Built in 315 AD, it was created to celebrate Emperor Constantine the Great's victory. Today, the Arch and the Colosseum together form one of the most recognizable views in Rome. A short walk from here brings you to the Roman Forum. If the Colosseum was ancient Rome's greatest entertainment stage, then the Roman Forum was the true heart of the city. 2,000 years ago, this was where Romans handled government affairs, held public meetings, traded goods, read official announcements, listened to speeches, and discussed the most important events of daily life. Today, visitors see a landscape of broken columns and ruined walls. But hidden among these stones are some of Rome's most important historical sites: the Sacred Way, the ancient road where countless triumphal processions once passed; the Curia Julia, where the Roman Senate met; the Arch of Titus, celebrating Rome's victory in Jerusalem; the Arch of Septimius Severus, honoring imperial military achievements, as well as the remains of temples dedicated to Saturn and Vesta. Individually, they may look like fragments of stone, but together, they form an ancient map of Rome itself. The most powerful and unforgettable moments of Roman history are still buried among these ruins. Next to the Roman Forum rises Palatine Hill. This is where the story of Rome is believed to have begun. According to legend, Romulus founded the city here, making Palatine Hill the symbolic birthplace of Rome. Later, this hill became the most prestigious address in the empire. Wealthy Romans, politicians, and eventually emperors chose this place for their homes. Imperial palaces were built across the hill, overlooking the city below. Today, walking through Palatine Hill, you can still see the remains of imperial residences, grand courtyards, gardens, fountains, and enormous terraces. Interestingly, the name of Palatine Hill influenced the word palace in many languages. The English word palace and the Italian word palazzo both trace their roots back to Palladium, the ancient Roman name for this hill. Beside the Roman Forum is another important hill, Capitoline Hill. It is one of Rome's famous 7 hills and was one of the most important religious and political centers of ancient Rome. Walking up the steps, you reach Piazza del Campidoglio, a masterpiece redesigned by Michelangelo in the 16th century. The square was carefully planned with symmetry and a strong sense of ceremony. At the front stands the senatorial palace, today part of Rome's city government. In the center of the square is the famous equestrian statue of Marcus Aurelius, one of the greatest surviving bronze sculptures from ancient Rome. Nearby, the Capitoline Museums preserve countless treasures from Rome's past, including the famous Capitoline wolf, the legendary she-wolf said to have raised Romulus and Remus. If you want to see another side of Rome, baths of Caracalla. Built between 212 and 216 AD, these are among the most impressive surviving public bath complexes from ancient Rome. But this was far more than just a place to take a bath. 2,000 years ago, it was closer to a giant entertainment and social complex. People came here to bathe, exercise, relax, read, meet friends, and spend hours enjoying public life. What you see today are enormous brick walls and ruined arches. But in ancient times, these halls were covered with marble, colorful mosaics, sculptures, and fountains. The complex could accommodate thousands of people at the same time. Walking through these ruins, you realize that ancient Rome was not only about gladiators and emperors. A city becomes truly alive through the everyday spaces where ordinary people gather, communicate, and enjoy life. Continuing from the ancient ruins toward the heart of Rome's historic center, you will soon arrive at Piazza Venezia. This square can be seen as a meeting point between ancient Rome and modern Italy. On one side, it connects with the ruins of the Roman Forum. On the other, it leads towards some of Rome's most famous landmarks, including the Pantheon and the Trevi Fountain. The most eye-catching building here is the enormous white marble monument known as the Vittoriano, officially called the Altar of the Fatherland. Construction began in 1885 to honor Victor Emmanuel II, the first king of a unified Italy. Built entirely from white marble, the monument features grand staircases, towering columns, and an impressive equestrian statue. Standing in front of it, many visitors feel as if they have stepped out of ancient Rome and onto the stage of modern Italy's national identity. Next to Piazza Venezia, you will find the Trajan's Forum. Built in the early 2nd century AD, it was the last and largest of the imperial forums of ancient Rome. The forum was commissioned by Emperor Trajan to celebrate his victory over the Dacians, a campaign that expanded the Roman Empire to one of its greatest territorial extents. The most famous landmark here is Trajan's Column. Covered with detailed spiral carvings, the column tells the story of the Dacian Wars through thousands of stone reliefs, almost like a giant history book carved into marble. Nearby stands Trajan's Market, one of the best examples of ancient Roman commercial architecture. Looking across this area, you begin to realize that Romans did not simply build monuments to remember their achievements. The next stop is one of Rome's greatest architectural masterpieces, the Pantheon. The earliest version of the Pantheon dates back to around 27 BC, when it was built by Marcus Agrippa, a close friend and trusted ally of Emperor Augustus. The building we see today, however, is mainly the result of reconstruction carried out under Emperor Hadrian in the 2nd century AD. What makes the Pantheon extraordinary is not just its impressive entrance with its massive columns, but what happens when you step inside. Above your head is a breathtaking dome measuring about 43 meters in diameter. There are no supporting columns inside the main space. The entire structure is held together by the engineering genius of the dome itself. Nearly 2,000 years after its construction, the Pantheon still has one of the largest unreinforced concrete domes in the world. At the center of the ceiling is the famous circular opening called the oculus, measuring about 8.9 meters across. It is the only source of natural light inside the building. As the sun moves throughout the day, a single beam of light slowly travels across the interior walls, almost as if the building itself is keeping track of time. The Pantheon was later converted into a Christian church, and this change of purpose helped preserve it far better than many other ancient Roman structures. Continuing through the historic center, you will eventually reach the Trevi Fountain, one of the most famous fountains in the world. Known by many visitors as the Wishing Fountain, the Trevi Fountain is the largest Baroque fountain in Rome. The fountain we see today was built between 1732 and 1762, but its story goes back even further, connected to the ancient Roman Aqua Virgo, one of the city's historic aqueducts. The fountain was built against the back wall of Palazzo Pali. Standing about 26 meters high and 49 meters wide, it feels less like a fountain and more like an entire theatrical scene carved from stone. At the center is Oceanus, the god of the sea, riding a shell-shaped chariot. Around him, waves, rocks, and powerful horses seem to burst out of the marble itself. Many visitors follow the tradition of turning their backs to the fountain and tossing in a coin, believing that doing so means they will one day return to Rome. From the Trevi Fountain, continue north, and you will arrive at Piazza di Spagna and the famous Spanish Steps. Built between 1723 and 1725, the staircase contains 135 steps and was designed to connect the lower Piazza di Spagna with the Church of Trinita dei Monti above. Despite its name, the Spanish Steps were not built by Spain. They received their name because the Spanish embassy was once located nearby, and the name remained throughout history. The staircase became even more famous after the classic film Roman Holiday, when Audrey Hepburn's character sat here eating gelato, creating one of cinema's most unforgettable images of Rome. At the bottom of the steps is the Fountain of the Old Boat, or Fontana della Barcaccia. Its design resembles a half-sunken boat, and it is believed to have been inspired by the flooding of the Tiber River. Continuing north from the Spanish Steps, you will arrive at Piazza del Popolo. This square can be considered the northern gateway to Rome's historic center. For centuries, travelers arriving from the north would enter the city through this area before continuing into the heart of Rome. At the center of the square stands the Flaminian obelisk, an ancient Egyptian obelisk originally brought to Rome by Emperor Augustus. On one side of the square stand two churches that look almost like mirror images of each other, Santa Maria dei Miracoli and Santa Maria in Monte Santo. They are among the finest examples of Rome's Baroque architecture. From here, three major streets extend into the historic center. The most important one is Via del Corso, which runs south through the city and leads towards some of Rome's most famous landmarks. Following the old streets toward the Tiber River, you will reach Piazza Navona. Today, it is one of Rome's most elegant Baroque squares, filled with fountains, restaurants, street performers, and outdoor cafes. But beneath this beautiful square lies a much older story. Almost 2,000 years ago, this was not a city plaza at all. It was the site of the Stadium of Domitian, built by Emperor Domitian in the 1st century AD. That is why Piazza Navona has its unusual, elongated oval shape. The outline of today's square follows the original shape of the ancient stadium's racing track. At the center of the square stands its most famous landmark, the Fountain of the Four Rivers, created by the great Baroque artist Gian Lorenzo Bernini in the 17th century. The four giant river gods represent four major rivers of the world known at the time: the Nile River, the Ganges River, the Danube River, and the Rio de la Plata. Nearby stands the beautiful church of Sant'Agnes in Agone. Together, the ancient stadium beneath the ground and the magnificent Baroque architecture above create a perfect example of Rome's layered history, where different eras are built directly on top of one another. Continue walking toward the Tiber River, and you will see Castel Sant'Angelo, or the Castle of the Holy Angel. But originally, this was not a castle at all. It began as the mausoleum of Emperor Hadrian, built in the 2nd century AD as his final resting place. Over the centuries, its role completely changed. It became a military fortress, a prison, and eventually a refuge for popes during dangerous times. A secret passage connected the castle with the Vatican. Known as the Passetto di Borgo, this fortified corridor allowed popes to escape from the Vatican and reach the safety of Castel Sant'Angelo in emergencies. In front of the castle is the beautiful Ponte Sant'Angelo. The bridge is decorated with a series of angel statues, creating a dramatic and almost ceremonial pathway across the river. Walking across this bridge, surrounded by stone angels and the ancient fortress ahead, feels like stepping directly into Rome's history. Beyond Castel Sant'Angelo lies one of the most unique places on Earth, Vatican City. Strictly speaking, Vatican City is an independent country, but it is completely surrounded by the city of Rome. That is why many visitors naturally include it as part of their Roman journey. Here you will find St. Peter's Square, St. Peter's Basilica, the Vatican Museums, and the Sistine Chapel. Each of these places contains enough history, art, and stories to fill an entire episode. So Vatican City deserves its own journey, and we will explore it in detail in the next episode. Finally, if you want to experience a quieter and more open side of Rome, head to the Park of the Aqueducts. Located in the southeastern part of Rome, this vast park covers around 240 hectares and preserves some of the most impressive remains of the ancient Roman water system. The most famous structures here are the Aqua Claudia and the Annio Novis aqueducts. More than 1,900 years ago, these massive stone channels carried fresh water from distant mountains into Rome, supplying the city's fountains, baths, and daily life. Standing among the fields and looking at these endless rows of arches, you realize that these aqueducts may not have the fame of the Colosseum or the beauty of Rome's churches, but they were the hidden lifelines that allowed the greatest city of the ancient world to survive. Especially at sunset, when golden light passes through the ancient arches, the scene becomes incredibly peaceful. It feels as if Rome has saved some of its greatest stories not in the busiest streets, but in the quiet moments between the stones. After walking through Rome, you begin to realize that what makes this city unforgettable is not simply the number of ancient monuments it has preserved. It is the stories hidden behind every stone. The broken walls of the Colosseum, the sunlight passing through the dome of the Pantheon, the sound of water flowing through Baroque fountains, and the quiet shadows beneath ancient aqueducts. All of them tell the story of a civilization that has continued to live through more than 2,000 years of change. Rome is not just a city frozen in the past. It is a place where history has never truly disappeared. The glory of the Roman Empire, the struggles of its decline, and the countless moments of rebirth have all been layered together, creating the city we see today. That is why Rome is called the Eternal City, not because it never grows old, but because even after thousands of years, it still has the power to move people.